For me, this analysis will be the ultimate proof that being more recent doesn't make something better. I don't think that everything in the past was of higher quality, but I do think that with the advent of new hardware, gaming has lost a step. The lowering of limitations also lowered creativity in one fell swoop. It seems that with new engines, devs expect games to make themselves. I'm not quite in the know in the development of this game. All I know is that there was a day one patch, so we can assume that there was some trouble in the making of the project. I know games are not easy to make or remake, blah 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 blah, but I still think we shouldn't shy away from criticism, and the difference in quality shows up as early as the intro. Let's make no mistake, the game is objectively better looking than the original. The issue is that because of the objective improvements, there seems to be a lack of attention to the little things. In the original intro, when you're introduced to the antagonist, there's a dark and eerie feeling to it. Despite the colorful environment, there's a distinct contrast between light and shadow. It gives depth and gradient to the scene, and even the good characters look mysterious. Even the character models look far scarier in the original. Despite the lower polygon count and the awful mid-90s CGI, you can tell in the art style that the proportions were made to be more realistic. Also, the CGI is stylized and just advanced enough not to be too distracting and suffer too harshly from the uncanny valley effect. In the remake, everything is so well lit and rounded up that it gets barely more mood than a children's Halloween special. The new lighting creates a loss of depth, and because of the style of the models, everything looks more like a modern 3D animated movie, and not in a good way. 3D has advanced enough that it can be done less expensively than 2D animation. Because of that, you sort of have these chain-produced 3D movies. They look good, but sort of all the same. This is the energy that I get from this game. Gameplay-wise, I had not played the original, but the second one. Playing the remake was technically my first experience with the original, and gave me a bad impression of it. I thought that the original was terrible and janky, that the only flaw of the remake was being too faithful. However, numerous flaws actually originated with the remake. The original is simple in the sense that you use close and ranged weapons to take on enemies. You simply wail on them, beat them up style until they fall. If they get close, you use your shield to block, ladder, rinse and repeat. It works very well, all things considered. It's in the remake that things turn sour. The hitboxes have been changed for the weapons, which means that when enemies approach, they get closer than they should and you get hit for no reason, and you often end up in trades that are not at all at your benefit. It's especially egregious in the levels with the shadow demons, who are particularly aggressive. The remake does have improvements, such as being able to toggle between more weapons. It means that you're not stuck opening the menu constantly. Despite this, I'd rather have the limitations of the original, if that means that I get better overall gameplay. When it comes to the actual level design, I can say that things are usually good. Visually, Ghosts and Goblins and Nightmare Before Christmas serve as inspiration. You can see it in the twisted hills. However, some flaws do survive from the original. The overall levels are fine, but some are well known to be annoying, such as the Anthill. It's a dark cave with twisted pathways and no map, so you can get lost at your heart's content. If not for that, the maps are usually easy to navigate. They're usually flat ground, and maybe occasionally you get some level changes. They get more complex in the sense that there's multiple objectives to be done to progress, like a more simple Resident Evil. The layout by itself is pretty straightforward most of the time. In terms of music and sound design, there's a distinct Danny Elfman-like sound, numerous flutes and wind instruments. The higher pitched sounds gives a whimsical feel, while the more bassy sounds give an underlying sense of dread. It really nails that Halloween sound. The voice acting is also pretty good. The people in this game feel like actual characters, which is more than can be said about most games released at the time. People often talk of Metal Gear and Legacy of Kain, and while this is not on the same level, it's nothing to scoff at. Overall, Medieval is a pretty interesting game. It doesn't reach the height of other titles of its time that became iconic or became mascots for the platform, but it's still quite a fascinating adventure. It has its fair share of frustrating moments and wonky combat, but it's still worth at least a playthrough. I was surprised to behold how better it was than its remake, and I don't really recommend the latter. Medieval is a really good title to put you into that Halloween spirit. Go try it.